Hey Collective, it's Alan. I'm coming to you with a follow-up video that will be going along with the new series I've just recently been working on for the YouTube audience, specifically dealing with the topic of ascension and kind of from a perspective of looking at our experiences that we are sharing as a form of school, if you will, for the soul, where many of us are starting to come to terms with the fact that we might actually be a walking entrance exam for the soul, or a walking master's thesis incarnate, or a dissertation for our PhD in the school academy, where we basically are showcasing what we've learned and what we've accrued over time and how we can be of greater service, with the ideology or the principle being behind the idea that we then go on to serve humanity in some way, shape, or form. And I just wanted to begin by saying how thankful I am to all of you who interacted with me with the last video. I was really very pleasantly surprised because I don't ever really do anything for a reaction. I tend to do it just because of like a personal experience that I like to share with other people, so as to help other people maybe not feel as alone with what they're feeling or what they're going through. So I was pleasantly surprised, so I just want to thank you guys as we begin. But as you guys noted, this is the third video of the new series, which basically started off with me talking about the physical and mental portion of the ascension process that I was personally experiencing, and kind of the confusion that I had relating to some of the things and symptoms that I was experiencing. And so I had kind of gone into that with the first video. And then I noticed that when I was done playing, that I had felt like it wasn't complete. So in the second video, I went into the spiritual purification part of it, and basically talking about the process of the ego-ish death that comes with that particular journey, and kind of grounding in a way that more of you felt like you were connecting with me on it. And what I wanted to say with that particular video is that one of the things that I noticed in that experience is that we got into this really great conversation, or this flow, at least what I was feeling, of understanding kind of the more principality behind the idea of the scholastic experience, meaning that many of us are now in a limbo state where we're kind of trying to take the time to kind of let go of that part of the ego, let go of the past experience in order to welcome the new. And so it's an ongoing process. And so this third video will serve as a key piece to the puzzle that will hopefully help you guys understand what I've come to realize is the twin flame journey, or the soulmate journey, and kind of the actual purpose behind it through an explanation that is not as romanticized as the collective seems to think it is. So, in order to begin this, let me just phrase it like this. Let's say that you have a new program, like we were talking about in the previous video, that specifically deals with a new sensibility to the experience, where we are charting new territory as souls that may not have been walked before because we weren't there as a collective consciousness. And so part of what's unraveling, or what's being revealed to us, is that we all have particular functions and missions within the Earth Academy. And whether you're entering the collegiate experience by your entrance exam to college, or whether you're working on your master's thesis as an embodiment of what you're going to do with your journey and what you've learned in a mass and presenting it to the outward world, or if you're one of the smaller sections that is actually working on your PhD, or you literally are a walking, talking dissertation, we all have focuses and goals that we are supposed to be working through and working on. And so one of the things that comes up in that journey is, like I mentioned in the previous video, we're going into a sense that we are starting to uncover things that we may not have been aware of before, and are kind of playing with new topics and new ideas as they come up. And one of the biggest ones is this twin flame journey thing. So what I'm going to say about this is, I want you guys to look at yourselves, especially those of you who are graduating either with your master's thesis or you think you're working on your dissertation, to understand that as you wait for your new task, what you'll be working on, or what is best suited for your particular skill set, understand that you will be attracting like-minded people to help you strengthen those communities in those focus areas. So understand that the twin flame journey isn't just a romantic experience between two people who are mirroring each other, but actually have a physical function to the grand scheme of life. And it's super important to kind of break it down in a way that you understand the functionality of it, so that you understand the overall goal behind the twin flame. So what I want you guys to really put into the forefront of your mind is I want you to analyze what it would be like if for the first time ever humanity got over the mastering themselves portion of the journey, where you renunciate your old life by dying because you have mastered your emotions, your mental state, and your spirituality, and you've come to a place where you tend to use, or you used to be in a place where you would leave the academy, only now we're staying behind. And one of the big reasons might be is because of this particular connection between you and another person. Because what we're failing to see in the twin flame journey, because we've romanticized it, and it's the best person you're ever going to be. It's your best friend. It's all of those things. There's someone who mirrors you on the planet if you're part of this journey. But you have a function, and it is a task, and it has to do with where you're at vibrationally. And what I want to say is it's not just about you always being happy and peppy and being uplifting to other people. It has a lot to do with what your interests are and what your skill sets are, and does it mirror someone else's interests, and can you build something from that? When the one becomes two, becomes three. That third thing being what a twin flame is supposed to do when they've come together. So let's begin by looking at the program. So as such, what we've realized is that there are a lot of us who are no longer leaving the academy after we've mastered ourselves, if you will, or are on the cusp of mastering ourselves. We now are faced with a job function, or how can we serve humanity? And some of us are being blessed with someone who's mirroring that in order to create something new, creating what I would call the dynamic between twins, the yin-yang coming together and functioning as a whole. But one of the things that we failed to realize is that because it is a scholastic program, that you might be forgetting the fact that the function that we're looking for isn't physical. It actually has to do with your goal and your mission in life. And can someone be the bouncing board, the soundboard for you and interacting with you? Meaning that instead of it just being students graduating at this level, we're now talking about teachers or teachers' aides being brought together in twin dynamics where they will do something to benefit humanity. So when you remove the romanticism behind the notion, you realize that there is a job to these unions. It's not just all going to be the happily ever after dream. You're going to have responsibilities and goals that the two of you will do together. But the reason this is happening is because we don't normally have this many teachers or teachers' aides or students at this advanced level who have graduated to a point to understand the role that they're playing in the new script of the new world coming into view. And so by bringing them together, the big question becomes, what happens when you bring two teachers together? Does that change everything around them? And you understand the underlying current that surrounds the twin flame journey. And so when I looked at it from that lens, what I really got a good glimpse of was the functionality that comes when two people echo each other in their differences and somehow strengthen each other's core. Meaning that when two twin flames come together, you're not fractured and you're not broken. You are whole onto yourself. You're like the phi, the symbol with the middle, right? You stand alone. But the thing is that happens with the twin flames is that you become the infinity circle, where the two of them come together. Basically, the one breaks into two, and you form that 8 type of number. And the two of you are sounding boards and bounce back and forth energy and create quite a wonderful experience for the world around you, but understand that you are interlaced with the other person. But you can't come together until both of you have reached the 5, into the centered I am principle. So understanding that is a very key point to what we're going to say as we go forward. So one of the things that happens when you bring different students at that level together who are becoming teachers or who are on the verge of being the next class of leaders for a new movement for Earth and a new way of being for the collective consciousness, you have to understand that the responsibilities you have are going to be geared toward your life experiences. So while many of us are looking for physical traits or things about them, financial or whatnot, you're looking at the wrong indications of what might be your twin flame. Because the twin flame, from what I understand, under this ideology, where it's two teachers or two very advanced students coming together to work together in a joint effort, changes the way in which we probably should be looking at things and just kind of helping us relax and letting go of any expectations so as to allow the newness of what's to come play itself out under divine order, right? Because a lot of us have this thing about trying to control everything on a regular basis, and it doesn't usually go our way because, divine light will do what it wants to do. So understanding the fact that you actually are coming together with someone else who is like-minded you in most things, you have to understand that there will also be stark oppositions from each other, right? A yin and a yang, if you think of the symbol, which again would be the infinity, only in a centered point, creates a circle, which is the yin-yang. So you're going to have a lot of differences from each other, and you have to allow the other person that ability, because you are now mastering the ideology of what you can do when two divine sparks of light face each other and then face the world outwardly. What does that do? Because up until now, it's always been about us mastering ourselves and becoming a guru, a spiritual teacher, or a leader, but it's very isolatory. So the new program that we're talking about, with hopefully the success of the twin flame unions, if they can, bring it together, would be what happens when both of them decide to serve humanity together and face the world out loud. What will that do for the general population, and what will that do for the collective consciousness, which is a whole new way of looking at the twin flame. But the thing about bringing two people together is that because there's so many differences between them and then so many similarities, there are incredible blessings that are bestowed upon those two people in their union. They almost create their own institution within each other. And so it's a wonderfully appealing idea behind it, but you have to do the work that's required of you to bring it together. Meaning, if you're going to attract the person that you're looking for in this dynamic, you're not going to be doing anything to bring them in. You're just going to be yourself. And if it's meant to be, it'll be brought together by your interest, your video content, or whatever it is you're producing into the world at large. And somewhere along your journey, you will find them, because they will be where you're meant to be and where you're supposed to meet. So releasing control of it is super important. It's something that I've been recently watching with Aaron Doty over there, where he's been talking a lot lately about letting go. And as you guys may have noticed in the last video, I had made a comment about thanking all of the YouTubers and all of the people who really helped me along my journey. But I hadn't really gone into the names of it because I don't know any of these people. But I just wanted to say that obviously Aaron would be one of them. But he's been recently talking about letting go and letting go of expectations. And then I think today's video was very specific about I think he phrased it as the seesaw, and not putting somebody up on a pedestal and so forth, and you have to meet eye to eye. So understand that when it comes to this twin flame idea, it's not so much romantic, it's about divine function, it's about purpose. And so understanding that you might be brought together with someone who's a little bit different from you is going to be part of the hat trick that you're going to have to overcome. And what I mean is, there are some teachers who get a PhD who teach high school. There are some teachers who teach a graduate program. There are some professors who teach college, and some that just teach elementary school. No matter what their degree is, they've made a life choice to follow their soul's purpose in a particular function, but they graduated from the same school. They're graduating as alumni who are from a very particular fraternal or, we'll call it a fraternal organization. And it's of a divine origin. And so understand that do not be confused by title, because it may be about who they are and what they bring to the table and what they reinforce for you. Because there's nothing more interesting to me as a vessel of light than the idea of meeting a divine counterpart who mirrors divine principles back and forth with me, and that we talk about global and bigger issues than just ourselves. And we tackle things that deal from child rape to things about homophobia, or things about sexism, or like really big topics that aren't so much specialized in just our own tiny lives, but have to do with a public-facing aspect to the world. But the idea of it being a divine being, a divine masculine and masculine, divine masculine feminine, divine feminine feminine, whatever your criteria is, understanding that by looking at someone else in the physical form, it's not usually been done before. Usually, they don't have that happen. Usually, people renunciate all life and all materialism and then go out of the academy. But this particular program seems to be geared towards bringing specific groups of people together, and in this particular conversation, bringing 2 points of light that are yin-yang to each other into close proximity, and then doing something with that energy. And so when speaking to the way that we look at the world around us, understand that titles mean very little when it comes to some of this information, because you're not looking for the title. Again, the most advanced students, if they were like, let's say, teachers dressed as students, you would not assume were actual masters or teachers or even more higher ranking officials within the Divine Army. You would kind of gleam over them, because they would do what? They would hope that for the most part they were behind the scenes and people really didn't notice them, so that they could really grasp and gain the information they need about the world around them and really gauge people without them actually knowing who they are. So be very aware when you're looking at someone, especially when you guys start coming into your communities and so forth, and you start structuring the spirituality, that you're actually looking for camaraderie more than kind of being nitpicky about it. Because one of the things that we're noticing as a collective is that there is a sudden backlash, I guess, or a pushback coming through, where some people are nitpicking other teachers for the way that they approach their teaching style. And what I'm supposed to say in this particular scenario, since we're talking about the purpose of divine unions, is again, if you are a college professor, your approach is not going to be the same as someone who is teaching high school. Neither approach is necessarily wrong. It's just you're speaking to two massive demographics. And understanding how to teach and how to ground what you're saying more aptly to your student body is key to your success. But that doesn't mean that a college professor won't marry a high school teacher or even a junior high person. Why would that matter? They've graduated, they have their degree. Their life purpose, though, is very specific to how they can ground energy for someone else. So before you allow other people, leaders or whatever, to make you be pitted against other people and start nitpicking at their teaching style, look at their target audience and what their mission is, and ground your own energy and take a step back far enough to look at it and go, oh, wait a minute, you wouldn't say this. You wouldn't talk to these students the way that you and I talk to each other. A very advanced spiritual being is going to have a different dialect altogether, and we're going to understand ascension, we're going to understand big words that other people in the general population won't understand. So who becomes the most skilled at grounding that energy and being able to speak to each demographic in a way that brings them all to the table is a master. But understand that as they talk, they're going to parlay the information that relates to the student body they are approaching. So, a perfect example of this is, there's a lot of videos that deal with manifestation, and I actually have no issue with it. In fact, it's one of the great skill sets that you have to learn as you go along with this particular journey, especially if you're going towards your master's or PhD. But understand something very important. It's very easy for you to then stand and once you've gotten to a certain point along the journey and criticize someone else for using that in a way that somehow makes it more about the physicality and the materialism behind the world. Because what you're forgetting is that maybe they're trying to reach a demographic that is in slumber and does not understand spiritualese and will need to be approached in a way that is grounded into their everyday 3D experience. And you need to stop judging each other for the approach, right? An elementary school teacher who has a PhD, who chooses to serve that particular community, is not going to speak very eloquently to the kids in that part of the academy. They're going to find a way to relate the information to them through fairy tales, parables. I mean, Jesus spoke in parables for a reason. At that time, it was a great way to instill things before we had fairy tales and all of the stuff that we have and lore that we now have. What are they but not, if not for parables? So understand that it's the target audience that we are trying to connect with. Because one of the things that's going to happen when these divine unions begin actually crystallized and formed into unions, when they fully see each other and acknowledge that their mission isn't just sexual, it's not just about your life purpose, or it's literally about a divine mission that is bringing these particular two beings into each other's lives, because whatever their love is going to change the world. But it's a job. There is a function behind it. It's not just all going to be roses and chocolates. It's going to have some, cost to it, meaning that you're going to have to work. So understand when you look at other teachers to give them the grace to understand, first off, what is their target demographic? What is their task? And if you don't know, then maybe this is the worst time to judge them and put your personal bias because your task is different. Because one of the things I've noticed with really evolved, or people who claim to be very evolved, is they tend to walk with a chip on their shoulder. And one of the things that I love to do is walk by them and flick the chip right off of them and remind them that we are all equal in God's eyes. We are all his children, and no one is better than anyone else. And I just walk around flicking things off people all the time. And I trigger a lot of people, and it doesn't bother me. But I rarely do it on purpose. It just comes to a point when I start realizing that it's destructive to the community building exercise that we are here to do. And one of the things that I need to be very careful with people in general is to stop dividing us in order to make your ego feel better about your approach. Okay? That's the most straightforward way to say it. But understand that each demographic has a different need, and so their reality is going to be different from maybe the way that you have evolved, right? A perfect example is, I don't know if you guys have ever stopped to listen to some of the best spiritual teachers who tell stories through music, but I don't know if you guys have ever heard the song Fancy by Reba McEntire. If you ever get an opportunity to see what a true master can do with music, I want you to listen to that song very carefully and think about the writer, and then think about the master who then parlayed the information in song with her voice. And I want you to see how something that looks like just general pop music, well, technically it's country, something that was just a country song, had a lot more power to it than what most prolific writers can ever claim to do. It's literally the story of redemption. And one of the things that I'm supposed to point out to us as a collective is that the great architect loves nothing more than a comeback. Everyone loves an underdog. It's ingrained into our DNA, and there's a reason for that. And Fancy is a perfect depiction of what a master writer can do with very little material, and if structured just right, can parlay an incredible amount of information. But notice that no one really knows who the writer is. Everybody is looking at the face of the song, which would be, in this case, the angel that is Reba McEntire. And the way that she delivers it was her part. It had to do with the voice, and it had to do with that really gritty part of her voice and delivering in a way with her eyes in the video. Like, if you get a chance, check it out. That is a master. But most people would just kind of go, oh, she's a pop star. Or, oh, she's a country star. What does she know? Well, apparently she knows a lot more than most people do. Because if you listen to the song, she is telling you something super important, which is about hypocrisy. Which, for those of you who are teachers, and especially those of you who are under Jesus' house, understand that there's nothing that pisses off the boss more than hypocrites. It drives people crazy. And then if you want another cute story that's kind of funny, but kind of tongue-in-cheeky, that's a great depiction also of storytelling and what true mastery is. Just listen to the song Harper Valley PTA. That's hysterical. I love that song. But what I'm saying is that some of us will overlook someone because of the way that we see their delivery system, not giving them the credit to understand that their task is very interesting. It has to do with the general population and kind of seeding information in them so as to help them be guided in some way, shape, or form. And so understand that mastery, especially if you're a teacher, is going to look different from each teacher's perspective. And so take a minute to understand that before you go off and start bitching and moaning about how their approach isn't working for you. Well, then you're not part of that collective. But understand when you're looking at twin flame dynamics that you might have two stark opposite people being brought into union because they bring two demographics or two major sections of the population towards each other. For example, let's have an honest conversation about people who have amassed a certain amount of material wealth. I've said this before. There is something very interesting about the dynamic between somebody who has not sold their soul to their devil to amass power or to amass money, but instead have done it through due diligence and kind of stepping into it accidentally, and then amassing something without selling their soul to their devil. They haven't sacrificed love for money. They just haven't focused love at first as their priority. So they haven't sold themselves to anybody. But to the outside world, they would just kind of categorize them with all the other billionaires, millionaires who are running around doing all unspeakable things on perverted islands. You would have that energy of where you would immediately kind of go, oh, well, they know each other, so they must be the same. And the reality is that's not the truth. They just haven't had the life experience that we have, and so they don't look at the world the way that we might. But understand that person hasn't sold the love of their life. They haven't even given it an option yet. So they might be inclined to merge or to be brought into union with their complete opposite, who has absolutely no care for materialism in the world whatsoever. And I say this for a particular reason. Some of you are like me and have this thing, we're kind of in that limbo state and we're waiting for our next assignment and we're kind of looking around. We're not motivated by greed. We're not motivated by money. We're not afraid of death. And we're kind of looking at everybody going, I'm not sticking around for this shit. If this is what's happening, I'm good. Because death is not my enemy. I can go home at any minute. In fact, I would love to see, you know what I mean? So we have a different cadence to the way that we operate. But if we're still here, we understand that there's something really exciting about to happen. And so we're kind of gearing up for it and we're kind of doing our thing. But we're not motivated by materialism. So the reason I'm warning you about this, or bringing this up with a big smile on my face, is understand that some of your partners are going to be super wealthy physically because just because of who they are. They grounded their energy in the physical world, and you represent the super abundance in the spiritual world, and you are grounding energy from a much higher perspective. But both of you, by the time that you're brought together, will be into the mindset of helping build community and helping serve humanity. So don't be surprised if your yin, the yin to your yang, or the yang to your yin is a complete opposite type of personality, because it's not about you individually. It's about how you come together and what you're about to do for the world at large. And it kind of helps you understand why some of you are attracted to people that you're just like, why? 4 houses for what? What the fuck do you have 4? Like, that's me. 4 houses? What the fuck are you going to do with 4 fucking houses? I just need 1 condo with a nice view. I don't understand what y'all... You see what I'm saying? But there's a thing that we organically do, which I call it self-sabotage at a certain level, is when you stop living in ego, there's a point where you can be tricked into judging someone else. Don't judge a book by its cover. And we tend to do this thing where, because they're not exact replicas of us, we immediately go, nope, that's not for me. Nope, that's not for me. Meanwhile, it could be literally your twin flame, because there's going to be a little bit of tension between you two. You're not going to understand why you can't get the other person out of your mind. And if you're in close proximity, you're going to think it's never going to happen, because one of you is probably going to be standoffish and one of you is going to be interested. But if you're truly spiritual, you're never going to be all needy about it. You're just going to be like, all right, well, I thought they were cute. You kind of drop a hint. They won't pick up on it, especially if they are divine masculine. And so, because they like the whole conquer thing. And so there's a little dance that you do, but it's not that twisted game that people make it out to be, which is that toxic union shit. It's not going to be like that. It's just going to be that one of you might be super outgoing and the other one's super reserved. And so if the one that's super reserved happens to be the divine masculine, he's super protective of the loved ones in his close, intimate circle. So understand that he may not be the most outgoing person with someone he's genuinely interested in, because it's a threat to his single life. And so understand that there's that going on, and it's not you being rejected. You see what I'm saying? There's all these layers to the onion of the other person that I'm just trying to warn everybody, or trying to help kind of guide you as a brother and say, don't discount someone because you can't see it yet. Because we're not taking the opportunity to have this particular conversation, which is, it's not just about you and them, it's about your service to the divine and what you're going to do for humanity. And there's so much energy between these two individual types that if they ever do come together, it will be inseparable. And once they're together, it's one and done. There's no one's ever going to be able to break them apart. But you're going to be doing something with that love. Right? In a world filled with so much hate, hypocrisy, greed, corruption, all of the worst traits, billionaires who never give any money to charity, involved with unspeakable things that we're still all trying to figure out, why won't they go, why are you keeping this a secret if you're so there's all this dark. So how do you beat dark? Incredible amounts of love and light. And what can be more helpful to the world than having two people genuinely in love with each other, because they don't just represent themselves as an ego, they represent their souls coming into actual union with the other soul that might be a twin. And that dynamic does something super important for humanity, because it immediately dispels the idea that you can't have it all. And that's where I think we are in the journey. The why to why we're going through the spiritual, mental, and physical cleansing and purging is because what if your new life involves another human, living, breathing being that is the soul in full manifestation through the avatar, choosing his partner in the physical world, or her partner, and then stepping into that together because they know that they are meant to be. That changes everything without them having to do much of anything. Because again, remember, for those of you who are at this vibration and understand what I'm saying, your energy is super pure. There's a lot that's going on with you. And you can start to notice as you go about your day-to-day life that things are changing very nuancedly in your life. I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to roll with it. But the point is, understand that there's an incredible amount of magnetism to your energy. So imagine what happens when you have two mirrors of each other doing that, and how much growth and exploration will come between that union. And understand that the moment that they decide to give it a shot, it's done. It's the love of their life. It's the great architect meeting what I call Empress Etheria, but you guys would call her Sophia. It's Miss Sophia and the Emperor coming together and showing the world what love looks like in order to dispel this idea that you can't have it. Because one of the things that we're noticing as we step into this new leg of the journey is there's a lot of opposition to change. And one of the greatest things that is a big sore spot for most people is, for those who are super wealthy, one of the greatest threats to their life is you being happy with your partner and not having the money that they have. Because there's something weird about millionaires and billionaires that are not in right alignment, that do this weird thing that they blame the world for never finding love, or blame the money instead of realizing that they sacrificed even the possibility of love for the money. And so when they don't take responsibility for that, they tend to blame outwardly. Whereas you and I and the other teachers or students that are evolving quickly through the college level, through the master's program, and through the graduate, we realize that it's actually our responsibility and it's our fault that why things happen the way that they do. There are personal choices and part of the wonderment to the academy, which is free will, right? And so there's a whole conversation about destiny and fate and all that stuff. But in the end, what could be more rewarding than your success? But to these individuals who gave up on love or sacrificed it, it's not something they can have. And so, of course, they're going to come after you in a very strong way. In fact, I've learned firsthand that I have friends in my circle that have purposely talked me out of going or pursuing conversations with very important people, because they weren't very happy with the idea of me being happy, because somehow it made them feel worse about their own life, as though I have any responsibility for anybody else's accomplishments in this world. And when you see that, you let go of something that I call people pleasing, and it's part of that whole thing that Aaron was talking about. Like, sometimes you just gotta let shit go. Release expectations in order to do things, because what they were feeding was, they was feeding this thing about, I wasn't at their level, at the other person's level that I was interested in. And I remember that's the day where, this was recent, that's the day that I just started outwardly, like, going to X and going to different things and being like, hey, I think your work is incredible, blah, 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 blah. And I was being very genuine because I stopped listening to other people. So understand that some of the biggest threat to a corrupt individual is your happiness, because it reminds them of where they failed. You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have a partner and you don't have love, then you have lost the game. You are not even a player one. Player one scenarios are people who are willing to bet it all on where it counts. And the only thing that matters in this world is love. And so imagine how much opposition you might get in your coming together with a union. You might have friends that swear. I'll use me as an example. If you ever come across my video and you're interested, I'm sure that you have a couple people who talked you out of approaching me and the rest of you, right? They talked them out of it because they don't want them to be happy. They want them to be like them because they don't think they can have it. But that's the difference. A person who sold their soul to the devil can't have it. But a person who just put love on the back burner in order to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish in the first half of their life, amassed a great deal of money and built an empire for themselves, hasn't sacrificed it. Their intention was always, when I'm at a certain point and I'm ready, I'm going to be open to love. Enter the divine union. Enter the twin flame dynamic. And so that's what we're talking about. So before you guys judge each other, take a step back and realize a couple things. One, the person that we're talking about at this level, because it's uncharted territory, may surprise you. And the reason is because if you knew who it was from the very beginning, you might do this thing where you pursue, and you push the other person away. But if you guys come in whole, meaning you guys are whole, there's no fragmentation, you're not needy, you're not codependent, you're very free-spirited, and you do your own thing, but you choose to want to date this person, you guys come into contact with each other, suddenly you find yourself in love, and probably in very short order, you will end up married. Okay. But you have a job that you are meant to do. That's why you're getting blessed with everything you've ever wanted, because you were willing to go for it. Most people in this academy will go for materialism all the time. Like, they don't care about love. They're more interested about what they get, because they think that the more money that they have, the more people will be around them, failing to realize that it's the ultimate scam. Because the people that surround people who are super, super wealthy most of the time, if they're not in right alignment, are after them because of the money and the opportunities they get by being near them. Whereas divine students who are teachers or masters or angels in waiting, whatever you want to call it, are attracted by the need to serve humanity. And so there's a different way of looking at it. So sometimes what you're going to find is you're going to need to take a step back when you find somebody that you're really interested in, like somebody who really grabs your attention, even if they're in the public eye. Take a step back if you have a slight, uncomfortableness to it, and ask yourself, what is the demographic that they're focused on? Because they wouldn't be in my eye line if they weren't at the level that I was vibrationally. And what I mean by that is very specific and it's very interesting. So hopefully this makes sense to all of you. But there's this thing about realizing that some students graduate before other students do. And for some reason in this academy, we have come into this understanding or this belief system that because they have reached the destination that you thought you were going to before you did, they're somehow out of your league or that they're more advanced than you are. And the truth is, no, you just got there. Wherever they are, you're now at that vibration. The only thing stopping you right now is you're holding on to the old life, which is telling you that they're not reachable, or that there's a difference when there's not. So understand that's a misconception. It's not real. Because when you reach a certain level vibrationally, other people at that vibration become very aware of you, almost like you end up in a spiritual DM, like a direct message from spirit that basically goes, hey, and suddenly you pop up on their feed or something, right? Because that's happened to me ever since the last video. There are 4 people that pop up on my feed now, like every third video is these 4 people. And so I know who they are and I'm very interested in them and I've reached out to a couple of them. I never expect any response to them. But what I've learned is that I don't have any false pretense of them being ahead of me. Instead, I've just realized that I have reached where I was supposed to reach them to even have the audacity to even say anything to them. Because I removed that idea that anybody's better than me. So understand that just because there are students who are a little bit older or a little bit younger, and just because they may have graduated a certain level before you got there, doesn't mean that you're not meant to be at the same table. So that's really big for those of you who are understanding what a twin flame is because, again, some will have amassed a great deal of an empire, let's say, in the physical world. It doesn't have to be an empire, because like for me, I'm not really motivated by that. But let's say that they've done something that's really great for humanity and maybe created a foundation or work for a nonprofit or something, and suddenly you stepping into your power suddenly puts you on their radar. And you don't know that, but they've amassed it in the physical form. Whereas you are grounding energy from a spiritual lens, and you're grounding it into the 3D experience in a way that brings you exactly at the same vibration. You're just looking at it from a different perspective, and you're losing hope on something that hasn't been written in stone. So understand that just because somebody has gotten to where you are getting now before you, it doesn't mean they're any better or worse than you are. It just means that they're another student who is probably a cohort and part of your specific class. And then also realize that there are students who graduate other colleges. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say that you have a student who is exceedingly gifted with mathematics. And they come into contact with someone who's exceedingly gifted from, I don't know, somebody dealing with engineering or something like that. They're similar, but they're from different base camps. And so they're from different departments. So don't be surprised if the person that has mastered their own domain isn't at your eye level just because you're not in the same job functionality that they have, or just because your original mission wasn't the same as theirs was. I hope that makes sense to everybody, right? Because you can have an incredible writer that falls in love with an incredible computer specialist, right? One deals with programming in the matrix, and the other person deals with humanity. But they're both masters, they're just in different departments. So please understand that as we go into this next phase, because part of what you are the test dummies for, the experimentation, is can this work? And what are the results of such labor? What happens when you have 2 incredibly powerful beings in their own right, whatever department they're from, whatever school they went to, whatever their degree is, who come into union with each other? What is the physical ramifications to the game of life? And does it do everything that they're hoping it does? Because if you can understand it from that lens, then you'll understand that there's a functionality to it. And the moment that you guys come together, when you are willing to risk it all for each other, usually it's the divine masculine who will do it, but the divine feminine equally. I just think the divine feminine will be probably more receptive because she's been kind of waiting for a minute, even though we're not worried about who it is necessarily, but energetically. There's been a lot more going on sometimes with the divine feminine. But the divine masculine, if it comes into view and they realize that that's their partner, suddenly when they come in together, there's a birth of something that is your mission. But you won't know until you take the risk and come into union with your partner. And that's the message I'm supposed to parlay. The reason a lot of what's happening is so new to us is because we never used to stay after we mastered ourselves. kind of originally the whole program was run so that we would master ourselves and then graduate to the higher levels, and we would leave the Earth Academy in order to do that, in order to be a spiritual advisor, a guide, I don't know, whatever you believe in. Everyone has their own faith-based principle and foundation from which to stand on. But the point is, we used to leave. It was called the Great Renunciation, and you would renunciate the physical world and you would go into the ethers, wherever you go. But now, because of where we're going as a collective consciousness, and because enough beings of light are now in a position of a spiritual prowess that is so important and so relevant to help guide the next wave, we're now traversing new terrain in which we're bringing teachers together that may not know that they are meant to be together originally, but when it's looked at through this lens, will suddenly go, oh, I get it. Oh, okay. And suddenly it'll be a lot greater understanding for them as to why they're suddenly so into the other person. But once they come together, the point is that the world will open up to them in a way that they could have never imagined. And that's my message to you guys. In the end, what I'm trying to say to you is that divine union has a job. It's not just you get blessed with all whatever it is that you're pursuing in life. You then have to do something with your partner that will come organically and innately from the interaction between you. Because again, you are the divine in this incarnation, looking at the divine in the other incarnation, mirroring each other and having a dialogue in physical form with each other and interacting and playing with each other in a way that then creates something so astonishing that the world will be blown open. That is the mission behind a divine union. So though I understand the need and the desire for all of us to romanticize it, because we do know that it will be a dream come true, understand that you have responsibilities and job functions that will come to you the moment that you guys say yes to coming together. So if you are one of these people who's trying to figure out why all this new terrain is opening up for us, it's because you're finally getting your best friend. You're getting the partner of your life. But you have responsibilities. And the only way to know what they are sometimes is for one of you to break the ice. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.